The rain had stopped just before dawn, leaving the small town of Maplewood wrapped in quiet stillness. A single light burned inside the old bakery on Main Street, where Amelia Brooks kneaded dough as the first rays of morning broke through fogged windows. Every loaf she made came with a prayer, for her neighbors, for peace, for healing. But lately, she had been praying for someone she didn't yet know. Across town, Hudson Cole sat in his pickup truck outside the hardware store he once owned with his late wife. The sign still carried both their names, faded by time and grief. 3 years had passed since the accident that stole everything. His joy, his faith, his reason to open the door again. Some wounds didn't bleed anymore. They just refused to close. That morning, their paths were destined to cross. A delivery mix-up would bring her to his door. A moment so ordinary, no one but God could have planned it. When their eyes met, something shifted. A silent echo in both hearts long used to emptiness. It wasn't love, not yet. It was recognition. The kind that says, I see your brokenness, Ma, because I've lived it too. But could grace really bring light back into a heart sealed by loss? Could God rewrite a story that grief had already ended? Amelia didn't know yet, and Hudson wasn't ready to believe. But heaven had already started the chapter they both thought would never be written. Morning found Maplewood rinsed in pearl gray light. Amelia tied her apron with a practiced prayer. Yeast breathed hope into the bakery's warm air. She stamped brown bags with a tiny wheat cross. Mrs. Keaton's order, the carpenters, the churches. One invoice misprinted an address on Main. She circled it, frowning, then smiled at Providence. The address belonged to Cole Hardware, shuttered lately. People still spoke softly when passing its door. Loss had a way of lowering voices. Amelia loaded the crate into her hatchback. 2 sourdough rounds, 6 cinnamon knots, mercy. The sky brightened like a promise deciding. Lord, go before me, she whispered and drove. Hudson sat inside, inventory spread like excuses. He avoided the framed photo on the shelf. Her laugh lived there, untouchable as sunlight. 3 years made grief look organized. Boxes labeled, heart unlabeled, God unchecked. A knock threaded the quiet like a sparrow. He stayed still, hoping it would fly away. The knock returned, gentler, patient as rain. Delivery for Cole Hardware, a voice called. He recognized the world's insistence on continuing. Hudson cracked the door, chain still latched. Brown eyes met his, steady and kind. Flour dusted her sleeve like winter prayer. Wrong address, right morning, she said softly. He unhooked the chain with reluctant fingers. The aroma stepped in before she did. Cinnamon butter, the memory of Saturdays. We didn't order, he murmured, cautious. I know, she said, but you're on my list. She lifted the crate onto the counter. Sometimes mistakes taste like Providence. He searched her face for salesmanship. Found sincerity arranged like simple furniture. What's your name? He asked, formal. Amelia Brooks, Maple and Stone Bakery. She offered a small smile, not performance. You can refuse, but the bread will sulk. He almost smiled. It startled the dust. She wrote gift on the slip in pencil. Survivor's discount, she added, then paused. Sorry, too forward, she corrected, hand still. He swallowed, the word landing true and sore. You don't know me, he managed. Pain has a family resemblance, she answered. The room admitted a little warmth. A clock ticked like distant footsteps of time. Hudson lifted a sourdough, its crust singing. He remembered sharing ends with his late wife. Remembered laughter chasing crumbs across morning. The present wavered, then steadied under breath. How much? He asked, armor returning. A thank you, she said, armor declining. For what? He asked, puzzled and wary. For fixing my porch last winter, she said. You left before I could pay properly. He frowned. Memory sifted through snow. A broken step, an early storm, a note. He had nailed in silence to avoid thanks. Gratitude had good aim, apparently. The bell above the door muttered with wind. Main Street hummed with boots and gossip. Amelia glanced at the covered windows, then back. You ever think of unlocking again? She asked. The question didn't pry. It invited. Locks keep out thieves, he deflected. Sometimes they keep out resurrection, she said. He looked past her to the street. People carried Saturdays like small celebrations. He remembered carrying them too once. Resurrection is for cemeteries, he muttered. And bakeries, she countered, not missing a beat. Yeast is tiny faith practicing Easter. He huffed a laugh against his will. She slid a cinnamon knot across the counter. Payment is taste and honesty, she said. He tore it neatly, soldier precise, awkwardly grateful. Sugar called down a forgotten softness. Good? She asked, not fishing, just present. He nodded, eyes lowering to safe places. It's dangerous, he said. Makes me remember. Remembering isn't the enemy, Amelia offered. It's the doorway grief is afraid of. He filed the sentence next to reasons to avoid her. Something in him loosened one notch anyway. I'm not a church guy, he warned. I'm not here with a sermon, she smiled. Just bread, which is kind of one. Rain restarted, tapping a hymn on the awning. She glanced at the leaking seam above aisle 4. Your roof's hurting, she said, practical. Join the club, he replied, half a wince. I can send the town's best, she offered. He charges in prayer and pie. I'm low on both, he said dryly. We accept installments. She grinned, tying the crate. He almost said no, then didn't. Refusal felt heavier than acceptance today. Leave the bread, he said, voice softer. I'll settle the porch debt with repairs. Neighbors before numbers, she answered, approving. The hardware store nodded in its bones. She wrote her number on the invoice margin. For leaks or days you forget how to breathe. He stared at the digits like a dare. Why bother? He asked, not unkindly. Because somebody bothered with me, she said. I'm just paying the interest of grace. The phrase made the room look bigger. Thunder rolled somewhere polite and distant. Amelia gathered her empty crate, not rushing. I'll check on you tomorrow, she said easily. That necessary? He asked, testing edges. Only if you want the good coffee blend. He shook his head, nearly smiling again. Manipulation, he said. Sanctified, she replied. She reached the door, then paused in thought. Turned, scanning shelves like a quiet curator. Took a pack of seeds, left cash beside. Sunflowers, she explained. They remember how to look up. He held the packet like a foreign language. Morning had taught him to study the ground. Maybe it hadn't taught him everything. After she left, silence changed temperature. The bread's warm breath filled the aisles. He broke another piece slower, listening inward. Memory didn't drown him this time. It floated. He noticed the cross grain in the wooden counter. Not a cross, just lines intersecting like mercy. Wrong address, right morning, he whispered back. On her drive, Amelia exhaled the held prayer. She did not celebrate. She interceded. Lord, keep his heart from retreating. Let tomorrow not feel like betrayal. Maplewood rolled by, roofs shining like wet coins. Sometime a man unfolded one hinge at a time. Would grace return before fear closed him again? The next morning dawned with a sky the color of pewter. Hudson sat at the kitchen table, untouched coffee cooling beside unopened mail. The bread Amelia had left sat wrapped in parchment, a small monument of warmth on his counter. He told himself he wouldn't touch it again, yet he had already broken off another piece. It tasted like forgiveness he didn't ask for, and that scared him more than loneliness ever had. Grace, he thought, was a dangerous thing to let in. Down on Maple Street, Amelia reopened the bakery. Her assistant noticed her smile lingering longer than usual. Good delivery yesterday? She teased, arranging muffins. Amelia hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, I think it went where it was supposed to. She didn't mention the man behind the locked door or the hollow look in his eyes, but she carried his silence like a prayer request. Across town, Hudson stepped into his shop again. The air still smelled faintly of cinnamon and sawdust. He dusted the counter without knowing why. There was a rhythm to the act, like sweeping thoughts too heavy to name. He found the sunflower seeds Amelia had left. For some reason, he didn't throw them away. Instead, he tucked them in his jacket pocket as if warmth might follow. A bell rang at the door. The world still had errands. Mrs. Keaton stepped in with her usual fuss and scarves. Hudson Cole, you look alive today. He gave a polite nod, not ready to admit anything like that. She browsed shelves just to talk, as she always did. Church potluck tonight, you should come, she offered. He shook his head. I don't do crowds. You don't have to talk, dear. Just listen, she replied. Her words hovered like a hymn he didn't want to hear. When she left, she took the chatter but left conviction behind. Hudson sighed and leaned against the counter. His eyes landed on the phone number Amelia had written. He stared at it until the ink seemed to breathe. Sometimes Grace didn't knock. It waited to be called. That evening, Amelia sat by her window knitting something small and uneven. She prayed without closing her eyes, and a habit of hers. Lord, if you want me to speak again, let him need bread tomorrow. It wasn't romantic hope. It was obedience wrapped in faith. She believed every act of kindness was a seed in winter soil, and she trusted God with the blooming. Some hearts, she knew, thawed one small kindness at a time. The next morning, the phone rang before dawn. Her voice still sleepy, Amelia answered, "Maple and Stone Bakery." A pause. Then Hudson's deep, uncertain tone. "Do you deliver coffee too?" She smiled into the receiver. "Only to people who open the door." He almost laughed, the kind that hurts and heals at once. "Guess I'll make an exception." By the time she arrived, the sky had turned golden with apology. Hudson had cleared a small space on the counter, 2 mugs waiting. "You drink coffee with customers?" he asked. "Only with the complicated ones," she said lightly. He poured, careful and reverent. Steam rose between them like invisible prayer. It felt less like caffeine and more like communion. "I didn't sleep much," he admitted. "Memories don't keep quiet," Amelia said gently. He nodded. "I used to believe time healed things." "Sometimes it just buries them deeper," she whispered. He looked up, startled by how much she understood. She didn't speak theology. She lived it in tone and timing. Her grace didn't preach. It lingered. He turned the mug in his hands, thinking aloud. "I stopped going to church after everything." Amelia didn't rush to fill the silence. She simply waited, patient as sunrise. "I couldn't stand the hymns," he continued. They sounded like promises that came too late. She nodded slowly. "Maybe they're not late, just waiting for you to listen differently." Hudson swallowed hard, something old breaking loose inside. He had avoided tears for years. They felt like failure. But sitting across from someone who didn't demand them made them possible. The air between them felt sanctified by empathy. He cleared his throat, half embarrassed. "You always talk like this?" "Only when it's not me talking," she said softly. He changed the subject, needing ground again. "Sunflowers. Why that seed?" "They follow the light even when clouds hide it," she explained. "They teach you where to look." He turned the packet over in his palm. "Seems like a hard way to live." "Only until you realize the sun always shows up again." Outside, a few townsfolk passed, peering curiously through the window. It wasn't every day Hudson Cole let anyone in, much less laughter. Amelia ignored the whispers. She had seen miracles start smaller. She stood to leave, brushing crumbs from her apron. "You'll be at the potluck tonight?" she asked. He frowned, predictable. "You don't give up, do you?" "Not on people God hasn't given up on," she said. He watched her go, her steps unhurried, certain. When the door closed, something stayed, like fragrance after prayer. He looked again at the sunflower seeds on the counter. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the earth still glistened. He found a small pot by the window and poured in soil. For the first time in years, Hudson planted something. He didn't call it faith, but heaven did. He wiped his hands on a rag, staring at the small clay pot. Soil clung beneath his nails, the way grief clung beneath the skin. He didn't know what he expected to grow, maybe nothing. But the act itself carried a strange peace, like exhaling after years underwater. The sunlight that reached his shop window was faint but honest. Hudson whispered without meaning to, "All right, God. If you're still there, surprise me." That night, Maplewood's church hall buzzed with gentle chaos. Laughter mixed with the scent of casseroles and coffee. Amelia stacked bread loaves beside paper cups, scanning faces for one in particular. She hadn't invited Hudson again. She had only prayed he'd come. Hope isn't pressure, she'd told herself earlier. It's permission. Still, her heart beat faster every time the door creaked open. Halfway through the evening, a hush rippled down the room. Hudson stood in the doorway, hat in hand, uncertainty written in his stance. Conversations faltered, then softened into smiles. Mrs. Keaton nearly clapped, whispering, "Well, praise be." Amelia caught his eye from across the room. No words, just welcome. He nodded once, slow, as if relearning how to belong. He filled a plate but barely ate, busy cataloging kindness. No one mentioned his absence from the last 3 years. No one asked about the accident, though the silence knew. They just passed him coffee, offered seats, and listened when he finally spoke. Something inside him cracked open, not painfully but cleanly. Grace was never loud. It just refused to stay outside. Amelia joined him near the window when the crowd thinned. "The bread was good," someone had said earlier. She smiled, remembering. "Did you plant them?" she asked quietly, eyes on his hands. He hesitated, then nodded, embarrassed by the smallness of faith. "They're just seeds," he muttered. She shook her head, voice tender. "That's how every miracle starts." He looked at her, seeing not pity but partnership. It was the first time in years that hope didn't feel like betrayal. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. "For bringing noise back into my quiet," he replied. Amelia's smile was soft as the hymn rising behind them, and for the first time Hudson didn't flinch at the sound of praise. Morning light found Maplewood bathed in quiet forgiveness. The streets still smelled of rain and cinnamon from last night's potluck. Hudson walked home slower than usual, his heart oddly unsettled. He hadn't prayed, not really, but something inside him had whispered anyway. He didn't like that it felt good, dangerous even. Vulnerability was a language he'd forgotten, and now Amelia had reintroduced the vocabulary of grace. At the bakery, Amelia wiped counters with a rhythm of contentment. The town was already talking. Hudson Cole had shown up at church. Some called it a miracle, others a coincidence. She didn't care what they called it. She only knew that the light in his eyes last night had been real. Still, she prayed he wouldn't mistake progress for healing. "Lord," she murmured, "let humility take root before hope runs wild." By noon, the bell above her door jingled softly. Hudson stood there again, hat in hand, posture hesitant but open. "Morning," he said, voice rough but gentler than before. Amelia smiled. "Morning, Mr. Cole, or should I say Brother Hudson?" He frowned, half amused. "Don't push it. I'm teasing," she laughed, wiping her hands. "Coffee?" He accepted, the motion slower than the first time. Steam rose between them like familiar prayer. "I planted the seeds," he said abruptly. Amelia looked up, eyebrows lifting. "You did?" He nodded, looking embarrassed. "They haven't done anything yet." "They will," she replied. "Grace takes its time." He stared at her, wondering how someone could believe so easily. After a long pause, he asked, "How do you do it?" "Do what?" she asked. "Trust like that. Like it's oxygen." Amelia leaned on the counter, gaze steady. "I've lost things too, Hudson. But faith isn't denial, it's direction." He frowned, processing the words. "It's easier when you haven't buried everything you loved." Her voice softened but didn't waver. "I buried someone too, my fiancé, 4 years ago." Hudson blinked, the confession hitting like light through fog. She continued, quiet and honest. "I stopped baking for months. Then one morning I realized my prayers didn't need to sound happy. They just needed to be honest." He exhaled, the sharp edges of pity replaced by respect. Pain recognized pain, but hers had found resurrection. They stood in silence long enough for the clock to sigh. Amelia finally spoke again. "You know, healing doesn't mean forgetting." He met her gaze. "And faith doesn't erase fear?" "Exactly," she said. "It just teaches you what to do with it." Hudson looked down at his coffee, wrestling with words he rarely used. "What if I'm angry at God?" "Then tell him," she answered. "He's not fragile." Her calm disarmed him. No judgment, no sermon. Just truth wrapped in gentleness. "You really think he'd listen?" he asked quietly. Amelia smiled faintly. "He already is." Something broke in Hudson then, not dramatically but definitively. He laughed once softly, shaking his head. "Why does everything sound simple when you say it?" "Because grace doesn't overcomplicate," she said. "People do." Her eyes met his, warm and unwavering. For a moment it felt like sunlight found the cracks inside him. He looked away first, unsure what to do with peace. "Maybe I'll stop by church again," he said finally. "Maybe?" she teased. "That's almost faith." "Almost," he admitted, and that was progress enough. That afternoon, word spread faster than bread rose. Hudson had helped a neighbor fix her porch without payment. Someone saw him smile at the grocery store. Maplewood noticed small miracles before they bloomed. Amelia said nothing, but her prayers deepened like roots. Every quiet change in him was a verse God was still writing, and she had learned never to interrupt scripture in progress. When evening came, Hudson stood on his porch, soil-stained hands on the railing. He looked at the small pot by the window, still bare, still patient. He thought of Amelia's words, "Grace takes its time." He wondered if maybe God did too. In the hush between heartbeat and doubt, he whispered, "Okay, Lord, I'm still here." And for the first time, he believed heaven had heard. Hudson woke before sunrise, restless with a feeling he couldn't name. The town outside was still sleeping, but his thoughts weren't. He stared at the small pot on the windowsill. Still no sprouts. "Figures," he muttered, reaching for his coffee. But something about the soil made him pause. It wasn't dead. It was waiting. And waiting, he realized, was a form of faith too. He found himself walking toward the bakery without deciding to. The bell over the door chimed like it had been expecting him. Amelia looked up, surprised but smiling. "You again?" He shrugged, embarrassed. "Didn't plan on it." "Good," she said. "That's usually when God does his best work." He laughed under his breath, taking a seat by the window. It felt both too soon and too right. "Rough morning?" she asked, pouring his coffee. He nodded, tracing the mug's rim. "Dreams," he said quietly. "About her?" Amelia asked gently. Hudson hesitated, then nodded. "She was alive. We were just, and then you woke up," she finished softly. He swallowed hard. "And remembered I ruined it." Amelia didn't interrupt. She just let the silence hold him. "You didn't cause the accident, Hudson," she said finally. He looked up, startled. "How do you know?" "Because guilt sounds the same in everyone's voice," she said. He leaned back, the truth catching him off guard. "I was supposed to drive that night," he whispered. "She took the wheel because I'd been drinking. I thought I'd saved her by staying home." His voice cracked. "Turns out I was just alive to remember." Amelia's heart ached at the raw honesty, but she stayed calm. "You're not being punished," she said. "You're being pursued." "By what?" he asked bitterly. "Grace?" "Yes," she said. "And it's faster than your guilt." He laughed once, broken but real. "Doesn't feel that way." "Grace isn't felt at first," she said. "It's recognized later." He stared at her, words failing him. No one had spoken to him like that since the funeral, with truth that didn't try to fix. Amelia reached across the counter, resting her hand over his briefly. It wasn't romantic. It was human. Holy even. "Hudson," she said, "God's not asking you to erase her. He's asking you to live what she loved." He didn't trust his voice, so he nodded instead. A tear slid down his cheek, and this time he didn't hide it. When he finally spoke again, it was barely a whisper. "I used to think love ended when the person did." Amelia shook her head. "That's not love, and that's memory. Love that comes from God never ends. It just changes direction." He looked at her, really looked, and something in him softened again. The pain didn't leave, but it lost its sharpness. He felt the strange peace of surrender creeping in, and he didn't fight it. As the morning crowd filled the bakery, Amelia stood to serve others. Hudson lingered, watching her laugh with customers, light catching in her hair. She wasn't perfect, and that's what made her believable. He realized grace didn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it came wearing an apron and kindness. He finished his coffee, left a few bills on the counter, and turned to go. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked without looking up. He hesitated, the door halfway open. "Maybe," he said. But the smile that followed gave away the truth. He'd already decided yes. Outside, the sun pushed through thinning clouds. Back home, the pot on his window had cracked slightly, a small green sprout breaking through. And Hudson couldn't help but whisper, "Guess you really are still here." The next morning brought a wind that smelled of rain and renewal. Maplewood's sky was painted silver, like heaven thinking out loud. Hudson stood by his window, coffee in hand, watching droplets race down the glass. The tiny sprout in the pot had grown overnight, taller, stronger, determined. He found himself whispering, "You're stubborn, like her." He didn't know if he meant Amelia or God. Maybe both. At the bakery, Amelia hummed softly while kneading dough. The hymn wasn't planned, it just rose naturally, like breath. Her mornings had grown lighter since Hudson's visits began, but she refused to confuse progress with promise. "Lord," she prayed quietly, "help me plant seeds, not expectations." Faith, she knew, wasn't about changing people. It was about loving them while God did. By noon, the rain turned into a storm. Winds knocked signs loose. Lightning carved the horizon. Amelia looked out the bakery window. Main Street blurred into gray. She thought of Hudson's shop and the leak in his roof. Without hesitation, she grabbed her coat and keys. Her assistant called after her, "Amelia, you can't go out there." "I'm just delivering grace," she shouted, smiling through the thunder. Hudson was already fighting the storm inside his shop. Buckets lined the aisles, catching leaks that danced like chaos. He muttered under his breath, soaked and frustrated. "Should have fixed this weeks ago." A flash of lightning cut the sky, and then came a sound he didn't expect. A knock on the door. He turned, stunned. Amelia stood there, rain dripping from her hair, a flashlight in one hand and a roll of tape in the other. "Your roof's auditioning for a waterfall," she said breathlessly. He blinked. "You walked here?" "I drove halfway, walked the rest. Somebody had to help." He frowned. "You shouldn't have." She smiled. "Neither should Grace, but it always does." Something in him broke again, quietly this time. Together they climbed onto the ladder, patching leaks with laughter and stubbornness. Rain poured around them like baptism water. At one point the ladder wobbled, and she grabbed his arm, steady and sure. Her hand was cold, but her presence was warmth itself. For a moment the world seemed smaller, just two souls under mercy's downpour. "Careful," he murmured. "I'm fine," she said. "I'm used to storms." They finished after nearly an hour, drenched and breathless. Amelia leaned against the counter, shaking out her wet hair. Hudson brought her a towel and coffee, fumbling with gratitude. "You didn't have to," he said again. She met his eyes. "Maybe not, but love rarely waits for permission." He didn't respond. Couldn't. His throat was tight. Grace was becoming visible, and it scared him. As the rain softened, they stood by the window in silence. Thunder rolled far off, polite now, like a warning spent. "Hudson," she said softly, "you don't have to keep punishing yourself." His shoulders tensed. "I don't know how to stop." "Then let God do it for you," she whispered. Tears welled before he could stop them. For once, he didn't turn away. Amelia reached into her bag and pulled out a small wooden cross. It was worn smooth, edges rounded by prayer. "This was my father's," she said. "He gave it to me when I was lost." She placed it gently on the counter. "It's not magic. It's a reminder." Hudson touched it carefully, reverently. "How'd he know you'd need it?" he asked. "He didn't," she replied. "But God did." Hudson swallowed hard, staring at the cross until it blurred. He wasn't sure what he was feeling, only that it wasn't emptiness anymore. Something had shifted. The storm outside had passed, but another was breaking inside him, the kind that washed, not destroyed. When he finally looked up, his voice was different. "Amelia, I think I want to believe again." Amelia smiled through tears she hadn't planned. "That's not small, Hudson. That's resurrection." He laughed softly, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "You make it sound simple." "It isn't," she said, "but it's real." Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the wet street in gold. And somewhere inside Hudson, something sacred finally let go. Hudson sat beside the counter long after the rain stopped, the cross still resting in his hand. It wasn't heavy, but the meaning was. He turned it slowly, tracing its edges with his thumb. There was no lightning now, no thunder, only stillness. And in that quiet, he realized something had shifted inside him. The grief wasn't gone, but it wasn't ruling anymore. Grace had walked through the same door grief once locked. Amelia watched him silently, giving space for the moment to breathe. She knew words weren't needed when hearts began to thaw. In her experience, silence was often where God spoke loudest. Hudson finally looked up, eyes red but unashamed. "Do you really think he can forgive me?" Her answer came without hesitation. "He already has, Hudson. You just haven't forgiven yourself yet." He nodded slowly, as if the truth was heavy but somehow fit perfectly in his hands. The bakery clock ticked toward evening, and the soft hum of the refrigerator filled the quiet. Amelia moved to the kitchen, returning with 2 slices of warm pie. "Apple," she said, "because every new beginning deserves something sweet." He smiled faintly, the kind that looked unfamiliar on his face. "Is this how you convert? People, pie, and theology?" She laughed, a sound so gentle it almost felt like music. "No. This is how I remind people that love is practical." They ate in silence for a while, the kind that healed instead of hurt. Every bite carried the simplicity of shared presence. Hudson glanced at her across the counter, her hair still damp, her sleeves rolled, her expression peaceful. "How do you do it?" he asked softly. "Do what?" "Keep believing when the world gives you every reason not to." Amelia tilted her head. "Because I've seen what happens when I stop." Her answer lingered, more powerful than any sermon. Hudson looked down at his coffee again, the surface trembling faintly from his unsteady hands. "I used to think faith was for people who never broke," he admitted. Amelia shook her head gently. "Faith isn't for the unbroken, Hudson. It's for those who know exactly where they cracked." He breathed out, the confession steadying him somehow. "I guess that means I qualify." She smiled. "Welcome to the club." Outside, the sun began to dip behind Maplewood's hills. Golden light spilled through the bakery window, warming everything it touched. Hudson stood walking toward it, drawn as if by instinct. He held the cross against the glow, its shadow stretching across the counter. "Funny," he said softly, "how light changes everything without asking permission." Amelia joined him by the window. "That's what grace does. It doesn't ask. It arrives." They stood there until the last of the sunlight faded, the air thick with peace. Hudson felt the quiet like a promise. Not that everything would be perfect, but that he wouldn't face it alone. He turned to her, voice low. "Thank you for showing up, for not letting me disappear." Amelia shook her head. "I didn't bring you back, Hudson. God did. I just carried the bread." He smiled fully this time, a real, living smile. And when he stepped out into the evening, the street smelled not of rain, but of beginnings. Later at home, he set the cross on his nightstand beside the small pot. The sprout had grown taller, bending slightly toward the window's light. Hudson touched the leaves with care, his reflection soft in the glass. "Guess you and I are both learning how to reach again," he murmured. For the first time in 3 years, he prayed, not for answers, but in gratitude. It was quiet, imperfect, and enough. And heaven, for the first time in a long time, heard Hudson Cole's voice again. Morning arrived like a hush after a hymn. Maplewood breathed easier. Streets rinsed clean by night rain. Amelia unlocked the bakery and set the bell to sing. Cinnamon rose, coffee bloomed, light spread like mercy. She whispered, "Keep him steady, Lord," kneading hope into dough. Across town, a sunflower sprout leaned toward the window. Hudson felt his own heart lean with it. The first crack came disguised as a notification. A local blog posted an old police note, half-truth bolded. "Businessman linked to fatal accident," the headline hissed. Names blurred, but everyone knew who it meant. Screens lit up. Whispers traveled faster than birds. Payne remembered the way to his door. Hudson read and felt the air thin. By 9, the bakery filled with cautious kindness. Some customers bought bread and left quickly, eyes avoiding. Others lingered, their silence louder than questions. Amelia kept serving and praying under her breath. "Lord, don't let shame set the menu today." She wiped the counter like an altar rail. Grace doesn't panic. It prepares a table. Mrs. Keaton arrived with newspapers and fury. "Lies can ruin a town," she muttered, stacking headlines. Amelia skimmed the words, pulse steadying by choice. She would not let fear narrate today. "Has he seen this?" she asked quietly. "Likely," Mrs. Keaton sighed. "He left early." "Then I'll go later," Amelia decided. At Cole Hardware, the phone would not stop. Unlisted calls, heavy breathing, then hung up. A stranger shoved the door, shouting, "Confess already." Hudson stood still, grief gathering like weather. He wasn't angry. He was tired of echoes. "Lord, I don't know the next right thing," he breathed. Silence answered, steady, unafraid, unshamed. Around noon, the storm moved from screens to streets. Someone pegged the window with a rock and a word. Shame scrawled in red, dripping like old wine. The glass crack spidered over the sunflower pot. Soil spilled, green snapped, quiet cried out. Hudson's hands shook. A broom felt like a cross. He whispered, "I'm sorry," to everything breakable. Amelia arrived holding a box of clean towels. She took one look and didn't ask who. She knelt in glass, picking pieces with care. "Plants reroot," she said, voice firm as prayer. "We'll set it right, one handful at a time." Hudson swallowed the ache of being helped. Humility tasted like mercy and dust. The deputy stopped by, kind eyes under brim. Old report got dredged. People read what they want. "We can patrol, but not police hearts." Hudson nodded, feeling older than the badge. "I'll make a statement at church tonight," he said. "Tell the whole truth where truth lives." The deputy nodded. Good place for light. After he left, the quiet returned heavier. Hudson found the corked bottle in the back room. Leftover from a customer's forgotten toolbox, dusty temptation. His hand hovered like a moth near flame. "Just numb it," the old voice offered softly. Another voice answered low and clear. "Come and be found." He set it down, shaking, and walked out. Amelia saw his face and understood without words. She poured water, not coffee, and passed it slow. "Brave," she said, as if naming a color. He exhaled, shoulders lowering, 1 inch of war. "Not brave," he said. "Borrowed." "Good," she answered. "Grace lends well." They stood in gratitude's quiet foyer. Twilight turned Maplewood into a chapel of porches. The church doors opened like arms used to welcoming. Candles dotted the railing, wax praying in drips. Pastor Elaine met them with a steady smile. "No speeches," she said. "Only truth with witnesses." Hudson nodded, throat a locked room. Amelia slid her hand to his sleeve. Presence, not rescue. Inside, the sanctuary hummed with unsaid things. Neighbors filled pews, eyes wide with weather. The blog's headline lay folded in pockets. Pastor Elaine read psalm words like scaffolding. "Truth in the inward being," the echo held. Then she stepped aside for an ordinary man. Hudson climbed 2 steps that felt like miles. "I was supposed to drive," he began simply. "My wife took the wheel because I'd been drinking. I lived. She didn't, that is the ache. I quit God, then I quit people, then breathing. I didn't cause the storm, but I built a shelter of guilt. I'm done living in there alone. I'm sorry, for harm, for hiding, for silence." He told what could be told without spectacle. Named the bottle he nearly opened an hour ago. Named the rock that met his window. Named the grace that met him first. "I won't earn forgiveness with penance," he said. "I will walk in it with repentance. I'm asking for prayer, not permission to belong." Silence stood, then broke like morning. A veteran rose, voice gravel with winters. "Me too," he said. "I've been hiding." A young mom whispered, "I've been angry at God." Mrs. Keaton cried without disguise, brave as ever. Confessions braided across the room like lights. Truth multiplies when someone goes first. At the back, 2 men slipped out, unready. Grace does not chase. It keeps the door open. A few stayed seated, arms crossed, deciding. Pastor Elaine did not sell outcomes. She simply prayed like someone who knew the path. "Lord, teach us the long obedience of love." "Amen," answered the tired and the willing. Afterward, Amelia found Hudson near a pillar. He looked emptied and somehow more whole. "Did I ruin your bakery's reputation?" he asked. She shook her head, smiling like sunrise. "You just advertised the menu. Mercy daily." His laugh sounded like a window unlatching. "Keep me to the narrow," he whispered. They walked back past the hardware's broken pane. Amelia set the sunflower stem in a jar of water. "Tomorrow we replant," she said, "both of you." Hudson swept glass as if rehearsing amends. "First call in the morning, the blogger," he said. "I'll invite him to hear it from me." "Invite him to breakfast," she added. "Truth eats best." Night folded the town into a softer dark. Hudson set the wooden cross where the window used to be. Streetlight turned its edges to quiet fire. He whispered, "If you want me steady, teach my knees." Then he knelt where glass had cut and grace had come. Amelia stood in the doorway like a blessing. "Tomorrow," she said, "we start with bread." Before sleep, he checked the sprout in the jar. Fragile bent, insisting on the light it remembered. He propped it near the cross and closed his eyes. Voices from the sanctuary hummed in his chest. Not accusations. Amends stitched by trembling hands. He breathed like someone finding shore. "Keep writing," he told God. "I won't run." In the quiet house, Mercy rearranged the furniture. Shame lost its favorite chair and sulked. Fear checked the locks. Grace opened the windows. Memory came and sat without shouting. Hope brewed something warm on the stove. Hudson slept not unbroken but unbeholden. Morning would ask for courage. He had enough to begin. Morning tiptoed into Maplewood, soft and gold like forgiveness itself. Hudson woke to a quiet that felt lighter than usual. The scent of rain still lingered, but the heaviness had lifted. He looked at the cross by the window, now backlit by sunrise. The sprout beside it had straightened overnight, standing tall. He smiled faintly, whispering, "Guess we're both learning to grow toward the light." And for the first time in years, he didn't dread the day ahead. At the bakery, Amelia arranged loaves on the counter, humming a hymn. It wasn't joy alone, it was peace in motion. Every morning felt like a small prayer answered. She thought of Hudson's face at church, the way honesty had softened him. Not prideful, not broken, just human again. "Thank you, Lord," she whispered, "for reminding us that mercy doesn't expire." The bell above the door rang before she could finish. Hudson stood there holding a small bag of sunflower seeds. "They didn't all die," he said, shyly proud. Amelia's smile grew brighter than the morning light. "Of course not. You replanted?" "Yesterday," he said. "Felt like something I was supposed to do." She nodded softly. "That's faith, Hudson, doing what you can and letting God handle the roots." He looked at her like he wanted to believe that fully. They sat by the window, sharing coffee in silence. Outside, the town moved slower, calmer somehow. People still whispered, but fewer with judgment, more with curiosity. Hudson noticed a few neighbors nodding at him through the glass. "I didn't think they'd ever look me in the eye again," he said. "Sometimes grace travels faster than gossip," Amelia replied, smiling. He laughed quietly, the sound lighter, freer. Later that afternoon, the blogger arrived, nervous, hesitant. He was younger than Hudson expected, guilt heavy in his stance. "I came to apologize," he said, voice cracking. Hudson didn't answer immediately. He just studied the man's trembling hands. "You hurt me," Hudson admitted, steady but kind. "But I hurt myself long before you did." The blogger's eyes widened as Hudson added, "You're forgiven." Amelia watched from behind the counter, heart swelling. It wasn't drama. It was deliverance in everyday clothes. No music, no applause, just grace being grace. After the blogger left, Hudson stayed quiet a while. "You think that meant anything?" he asked softly. Amelia nodded. "To him, to you, and to God. That's 3 hearts healed. Not bad for a Tuesday." Hudson smiled, shaking his head. "You make faith sound practical." "It is," she said. "It has to fit real life. Roofs that leak, people that fail." He looked down, hands folded around his cup. "I think I'm ready to go back to church," he said slowly. "You never left," she answered. "You just sat in the parking lot for a while." He laughed, a real, unguarded laugh this time. It startled even him. Joy felt foreign but familiar. "I'll take a front row this Sunday," he promised. The rest of the week, Hudson worked on repairing his shop. People stopped by, and some with tools, others just with stories. One man offered to repaint the front door. A few teenagers from the church swept the porch. Maplewood was healing one act at a time. Hudson realized the world hadn't stopped for his grief. It had waited. And waiting, he decided, was another kind of love. On Saturday morning, Amelia found a note under the bakery door. It read, "Thank you for showing me how to breathe again." No signature, just a folded sunflower leaf pressed inside. She didn't need to ask who it was from. Her heart swelled with quiet gratitude. She whispered, "Lord, let him stay steady. Let grace keep watering him." And then she went back to kneading, smiling through her prayer. Sunday arrived with sunlight spilling through stained glass. Hudson walked into church wearing humility like new clothes. People turned, some smiling, others tearful. Pastor Elaine met him with a nod that said, "Welcome home." When the first hymn began, his voice cracked, trembling with surrender. He didn't sing perfectly, and he sang honestly, and heaven counted every note as worship. Amelia sat 3 pews behind him, tears gathering in her eyes. Not because of romance, but because of redemption. She watched him lift his head toward the light, unafraid. Every broken piece in him now belonged to grace. The town saw only a man singing again, but Amelia saw the miracle, resurrection in slow motion. Faith, she realized, was love choosing to stay. After the service, they walked to the bakery together. The streets hummed with peace instead of pity. Hudson carried 2 bags of flour, smiling like he belonged again. "I forgot what it's like to feel useful," he said. "You were never useless," Amelia replied. "Just waiting for the right season." He nodded. "I guess the soil wasn't dead and just resting." She grinned. Even God rested, Hudson. They reached the shop, the air smelling of sugar and sunlight. Hudson helped fix a loose shelf, whistling softly as he worked. Amelia handed him coffee, the same way she had that first day. Everything looked the same, yet nothing was. "This place feels like home," he said quietly. "It is," she answered. "You just stopped standing outside." He met her eyes, gratitude written in every breath. That evening, the two walked along Main Street, lanterns glowing in the dusk. Children laughed, couples strolled, life unfolded without fear. Hudson looked up at the stars, remembering the nights he'd cursed them. "Funny how God never shouted back," he said. "He doesn't need to," Amelia replied. "He just keeps sending people." Hudson turned to her, smiling softly. "I'm glad he sent you." She blushed faintly, looking toward the horizon. "I just brought bread," she said. "You brought hope," he corrected. For a moment, the air between them felt holy, not romantic yet, something deeper, sacred. It was the beginning of love redeemed through faith. And for once, Hudson didn't run from it. Later that night, Hudson sat by the window again. The sunflower now stood tall, golden and strong. He lit a small candle beside it and bowed his head. "Thank you," he whispered, "for letting me start over." Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of cinnamon and rain. Across town, Amelia prayed the same prayer, and heaven, smiling, stitched both prayers into one. Maplewood woke to the fragrance of bread and second chances. The stormy weeks behind them had left roots, not ruins. Hudson opened the shop earlier than usual, hammer steady, heart steadier. Outside, children waved as they passed on bikes. He waved back, realizing he was no longer invisible. The world hadn't changed much, only his way of seeing it. Grace, he thought, was the quiet miracle of perception. Amelia arrived with her usual smile and 2 mugs of coffee. "You've been up since dawn," she said. "That's a good sign." He chuckled. "Couldn't sleep. My hands wanted purpose." She looked around the freshly painted walls, now bright with sunlight. "You gave this place a heartbeat again." "Or maybe it gave one back to me," he answered. "Either way, I think we're both under renovation." The church had started a community project that week. Pastor Elaine had asked Hudson to help rebuild a family's porch. He hesitated at first, fear of being watched, judged. But Amelia's words from days ago lingered. Faith fits real life. So he showed up, hammer in hand and heart open. By noon, laughter mingled with sawdust and grace. Serving, he found, was healing disguised as work. Amelia joined later with fresh bread and lemonade. The children ran to her like sunlight to warmth. She smiled, watching Hudson teach a boy to use a hammer. The same hands that once shook now steadied another's. Something in her chest ached with holy tenderness. That's what grace looked like, she thought. Steady, not loud. Transformation written in gestures, not grand speeches. At lunch, they sat beneath a tree, sweat and joy sharing space. Hudson looked up at the branches, light weaving through leaves. "I used to think serving others was repayment," he said. "It's not debt," Amelia replied. "It's gratitude in motion." He nodded, sipping water. "I like that." "Good," she smiled. "You're starting to sound like a believer." He grinned. "Don't tell the pastor and she'll draft me." By evening, the porch stood new and strong. Neighbors gathered to admire, laughter rolling like summer rain. Hudson handed Amelia a nail she dropped earlier. "Proof you helped," he teased. "I'm more of a supervisor," she said, feigning pride. He laughed, the kind that shook off years of silence. For the first time, laughter didn't feel like betrayal. Days folded into weeks. Faith became routine. Every morning, Amelia prayed over dough and over Hudson's name. Every evening, he checked the sunflower, now blooming like sunrise. They didn't rush anything. Grace didn't either. They just kept showing up, steady as daylight. Love, they were learning, wasn't thunder, it was rhythm. The sacred kind that doesn't need to be noticed to be true. One afternoon, a child from town came into the shop crying. Her father was sick, her mother at the clinic. Without hesitation, Amelia took her hand. Hudson watched quietly, heart swelling with respect. He fetched water, a cookie, a gentle word. Amelia knelt to pray with the little girl. Hudson bowed his head too, not out of habit but hunger. After the child left, Amelia looked at him softly. "You prayed," she said. "That's new." He nodded, half shy. "Didn't know I remembered how?" She smiled. "The soul never forgets where it learned to kneel." Hudson's throat tightened, words caught behind gratitude. He reached for her hand just for a second. No promises, no declarations, just presence. That night, the church held an outdoor service. Candles flickered under the maple trees, wind whispering amends. Hudson helped set up benches, shoulders strong, spirit lighter. When the first song began, he looked toward Amelia in the crowd. Their eyes met across a sea of light. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Grace had already translated everything. Pastor Elaine spoke about love that reflects Christ. "Love doesn't demand proof," she said. "It shows up and stays." Hudson listened as if the message had been mailed to his heart. He thought of Amelia, of second chances, of soil and storms. He realized love wasn't about deserving. It was about abiding. Every nail he'd driven, every seed he'd planted was worship. And suddenly, worship didn't scare him anymore. After the service, people stayed to talk and sing. Hudson found Amelia lighting candles for those who couldn't attend. "You light them for everyone," he said. "Even the ones who hurt me," she replied softly. He nodded. "That's what mercy looks like." "Exactly," she said. "And mercy looks good on you too." He laughed, but this time his eyes carried tears. Later, they walked along the quiet river road. The moon painted silver over the water, soft and slow. Hudson spoke first, voice low. "Do you ever wonder why God waited so long?" Amelia smiled faintly. "He didn't wait. We did." He looked at her, humbled by truth again. She continued. "He was patient until we were ready to receive." "Then I'm glad we finally did," he whispered. They stopped near the bridge where fireflies blinked like prayers. Hudson turned toward her, hesitant but sure. "Amelia, I don't know what tomorrow looks like." "Good," she said. "Neither do I. That's where faith lives." He took her hand this time, gently, reverently. No promises, just a beginning shaped like surrender. And heaven, quiet and proud, watched them choose grace over fear. The next morning, Maplewood woke brighter than before. People spoke of kindness more than rumors now. The bakery and hardware store stood side by side, open and alive. Children waved, the church bells chimed like laughter. Hudson passed Amelia a cup of coffee with a grin. "To grace," he said. "To grace that stays." She clinked her cup against his. "And love that serves." Together, they stepped outside to hang a new sign. It read, "Colin Brooks, Tools, Bread, and Hope." The crowd that gathered clapped and cheered, some laughing through tears. Amelia leaned toward him. "Never thought I'd co-own a hardware store." He smirked. "Never thought I'd sell hope." They shared a look that said more than words could carry, and above them, sunlight fell like approval. As dusk came, they sat on the steps of the bakery. No grand declarations, no dramatic endings, just two souls redeemed, breathing the same peace. Hudson traced the edge of his coffee cup, thoughtful. "You ever wonder if this is what she'd want for me?" Amelia rested her hand over his. "I think she prayed for this." He nodded slowly, tears glinting in the lamplight. Down the street, the church bells tolled softly, one for every promise kept. Hudson looked at Amelia, eyes reflecting both ache and awe. "What now?" he asked. She smiled gently. "Now we live it. Love didn't fix them, Christ did, and that made their love unbreakable." The stars above Maplewood blinked in quiet agreement. Morning dawned with a hush that felt holy. Maplewood shimmered under dew and sunlight as if creation itself exhaled peace. The small hardware bakery on Main Street opened its doors to laughter and warmth. Hudson stood by the window adjusting a sign that read "Grace at Work." He still marveled at how a town that once whispered his shame now shared his bread. Redemption hadn't erased his past. It had rewritten its purpose. And that, he realized, was the quiet miracle of grace. Amelia hummed softly as she arranged loaves on a tray. The air smelled of cinnamon, hope, and new beginnings. Hudson poured her coffee before she asked, their daily ritual of care. "Still nervous about tonight?" she teased, sensing his thoughts. He smiled sheepishly. "A little. I've never shared my testimony before." "You've been living it for months," she said. "Now you just get to tell it." Her confidence steadied him more than he could say. That evening, the town gathered at the church for the community night. Children carried candles, couples brought pies, and forgiveness filled the air. Hudson stood at the front, heart pounding, hands steady. Amelia watched from the first row, a silent prayer on her lips. He spoke not as a man who'd conquered shame, but as one rescued by grace. Pain, he said softly, doesn't disqualify us from love. It teaches us how to give it. The sanctuary listened, hearts breaking open and mending at the same time. When he finished, silence held the room before the first tear fell, then applause, not the loud kind but the gentle, grateful kind. Amelia rose with everyone else, her eyes shining with quiet pride. Hudson met her gaze and smiled, the kind that said, "We made it." Pastor Elaine stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "This," she said, "is what redemption looks like when it's lived, not preached." And the church echoed with one long, unified amen. Later that night, they walked home beneath a sky scattered with stars. Maplewood glowed in soft amber light, peaceful and alive. Hudson carried a small box Amelia had given him after the service. Inside were a few sunflower seeds, new ones. "For next season," she'd said. "Grace keeps planting." He turned them over in his hand, smiling faintly. "Then we'd better make room," he replied. The next morning, they planted them side by side behind the shop. Amelia's hands pressed the soil with care, whispering a prayer for growth. Hudson covered the seeds, steady and slow. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Every motion was worship now, every breath thanksgiving. When they finished, Amelia looked up, cheeks flushed with sunlight. "You realize these flowers will outlive us, right?" He nodded, eyes glinting with peace. "That's the point." They stood there for a while, watching the breeze stir the earth. Life didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt sacred. Amelia brushed dirt from her hands, smiling at the horizon. "Do you ever wonder why God brought us here?" she asked. Hudson looked at her, voice low and sure. "To show us that resurrection isn't an event, it's a lifestyle." Weeks passed, and the flowers grew tall and golden. Tourists came to see the sunflower garden of Maplewood. Children played among them, their laughter echoing like hymns. Amelia and Hudson worked side by side, faith woven into routine. Sometimes they spoke of the past, sometimes of dreams ahead. Neither rushed what was unfolding between them. They'd learned that love, like faith, blossoms when it's not forced. One evening, the sun dipped low, painting everything in amber. Hudson found Amelia sitting on the porch, eyes on the horizon. He handed her a mug of tea and sat beside her quietly. "Do you miss her?" she asked gently. He nodded, the answer honest but peaceful. "I always will. But I don't carry her loss anymore. I carry her love." Amelia smiled. "That's how grace works. It turns ghosts into gratitude." The wind picked up, scattering sunflower petals across the porch. They floated like tiny blessings, landing on their shoulders and hands. Amelia laughed softly. "Even the flowers say amen." Hudson chuckled, tucking one petal into her book. "They've learned from you," he said. "You keep teaching the world how to pray." She blushed, glancing at him. "And you keep proving that prayers get answered." The moment lingered, quiet, holy, alive. Days turned into months, and Maplewood's rhythm settled. The bakery and hardware store became the town's heart. People said the bread tasted different now. Lighter, kinder. Hudson always smiled at that. "That's what forgiveness does," he'd say. Every Sunday, the church filled with singing and second chances. No one called him the man from the accident anymore. Now they called him the man who stayed. One late afternoon, Hudson hung a new sign by the counter. It read, "Love doesn't fix us, Christ does." Amelia traced the letters with her fingertips, smiling. "It's perfect," she whispered. He turned to her, voice low but certain. "No, you're perfect because you reflect what he gave." Her eyes filled with tears, but they were the kind that heal. That night, they walked home beneath a velvet sky. The sunflowers glowed softly, bending toward the moon. Hudson took Amelia's hand, not in haste, but peace. "I don't know where this leads," he said. "Good," she replied. "Let God write the rest." He smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "For the first time, I'm not afraid of endings, only of missing miracles." They reached the gate where their gardens met. Amelia leaned against it, watching the stars shimmer. "Funny," she said. "I started praying for someone to help me rebuild the bakery. And God sent a man who needed rebuilding too." Hudson smiled softly. brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I guess Grace hires 2 workers for every miracle." She laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. The church bells rang faintly in the distance, soft, steady, faithful. Hudson closed his eyes, letting the sound settle in his chest. He whispered a prayer, and not for strength, but for gratitude. "Thank you, Lord, for turning my wreckage into worship." Amelia joined him in silence, her fingers intertwined with his. The wind rustled the flowers like pages of an unwritten psalm. And somewhere between heaven and Maplewood, God smiled. When dawn came, the town woke to golden fields swaying in the breeze. Amelia and Hudson stood side by side, watching the sun rise through petals. The past no longer hurt. It hummed like a lesson fulfilled. The bakery sign gleamed, the cross still shining in the window. Love had not erased their scars. It had sanctified them. And as Hudson whispered, "This is grace," the light replied, "And this is forever." If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe again. Subscribe to Redeemed Hearts, where love meets faith and grace writes the ending.